The demoralization is in full swing. Keep dancing until they leave. The eagerness to grave dance on unpopular games has become a bad habit. Why is it bad? Look, actual gamers are sick and tired of saboteurs and squatters in our hobby. Like, we're talking about people who hate gaming, who hate gamers, who hate their predecessors that created this industry. Yeah, we want them gone. If bad games don't fail, it'll result in more bad games being made. That's how the market works. So yeah, we're going to celebrate when bad games fail. We don't want any more bad games. Now, Concord's low turnout has led to the usual jubilation over the prospect of seeing a big game fail. Oh, this isn't even a prospect. Oh God, we saw this coming from a mile away, and it happened. A Soiny Zero shooter. I'm not going to call that anything there heroic. Concord launched late last week, and its Steam concurrents have yet topped 1,000. The only way Concord is ever potentially going to top 1,000 is if they go free to play. They might actually get a very simple, very small boost of people just trying to. Was this game as bad as everyone said it was? They're going to get a tiny boost, and yeah, it's going to tank again. The dramatically lower turnout has already earned it the title of the biggest flop of the year on social media. Yeah, it might actually even be bigger than Suicide Squad. And if you caught any of the discussion on Reddit, TikTok, and other platforms over the weekend, you mostly saw people gloating, posting screenshots of the SteamDB concurrency charts and tacking on a generic dunk or claiming it rules that we can all see a big game fail. Yes, let's see if lessons are finally going to be learned. I'm guessing no. I'm guessing there will be no lessons learned here. That jubilation over Concord's low turnout, it apparently cracked the top 50 bestsellers on the PS Store over the weekend. Oh. Okay, you cracked the top 50 on a platform that has no games. You want a cookie? Derives to some degree from an I told you so sense of justice. The idea that out-of-touch, creatively bankrupt executives are cynically chasing trends. Not just the executives, the rank-and-file the rank-and-file developers are too. And that the rest of us would have had the common sense to avoid releasing Concord as Marvel's Avengers, a Suicide Squad, a Gotham Knights, or that perplexing Gollum game. But it's not actually that easy to know why one game succeeds and another doesn't. No, in this case, it was obvious. It was obvious for all of those. Maybe not as obvious for Marvel's Avengers, but Suicide Squad and Concord, yeah, that was obvious. Now, the devs at Firewalk Studios, many of whom are ex-Bungie, must not have been Bungie's best. Yeah, we went over this when talking about Stormgate. Like a lot of times, these guys, they really just pad their resumes. Yeah, it turns out when you actually look into them, they weren't anywhere near as important as they claimed to be on their resume. So I've made a game in a genre that they have experience in and released it without the free-to-play monetization we so often complain about, which isn't a cynical or underhanded thing to do. No. The problem with this, though, you're entering a market where all of your main competition is free to play. No one's even going to give you a shot. I mean, maybe they would if your characters looked better. But concurrency numbers have, in some situations, acquired a moral quality. If you release an unpopular game, everyone is suddenly morally justified to shame and embarrass you, whether it's because all big-budget games are bad or live service games are bad or you did too much woke, pick one. No, you know what it is for me? That's $200 million in 8 years that they threw away could have been making the next Senran Kagura instead. That's what pisses me off. My guess at the real reason for all these the grave dancing is that it feels like a victory over FOMO. If a new $40 game sucks and no one is playing it, I can safely go back to whatever I was playing before without worrying what everyone's having fun without me. What are you serious? You just wrote that. What a fucking NPC. Oh, I'm only allowed to have fun if I'm playing the same thing as everyone else. No actual gamer thinks like way to out yourself as a tourist. Beating up on unpopular games is also a way to passively farm satisfying sense of vindication. If I never paid attention to a game that fails at launch, it affirms the correctness of my judgment and immaculacy of my taste without any effort on my part. Or alternatively, if you've been screaming for years at these developers to do what you want, and they keep doing the opposite and they keep losing money, you have some well-justified I told you so's to dish out. Then when a struggling game has a high enough profile as Concord does, the reasonable impulse to crack a joke about its Steam concurrence gives way to that sort of thinking, which then gives way to a shit talk free-for-all that turns the developers into cartoons, corporate stooges, and totally warps the reality of the game. No, in this case, I think the Firewalk developers are cartoonish corporate stooges. Like, that is actually an objective fact. Battlefield 2042 became one of these dogpaws back when it launched, and to make their point, its detractors started copying and pasting a giant list of features from previous Battlefield games that DICE was accused of removing, including features I don't remember anyone liking in the first place. Never saw anyone use Battlefield 1's fortification building system, but it became a must-have feature as soon as it could be used as a bludgeon. Now, to be fair, there is some truth to that. All of a sudden, people who never liked or used these features care about them because they're not there anymore. That does happen to a degree. But on the other hand, why are you defending allegedly new and improved iterations of a game removing features? Hey, this new version of the thing you like, it's the same thing you like with better graphics and only 25% of the features of the... Oh, I got it. The best example just came to me. Why don't you try this horrible take on the Kerbal Space Program 2 forums? Go ahead. Go to the people who were excited for Kerbal Space Program 2 and tell them, like, why are you complaining about all the features that the first game has that the second one doesn't? Not like it matters anymore anyway, since the game's been canceled, but still. Does anyone out there think that KSP2 is better than 1? Maybe if they finished it, it could have been. I don't think the mistake DICE made with Battlefield from 2042 was not making a list of every discrete feature that's ever been in a Battlefield game and then putting them all in one game. But through the warped lens of read it in other platforms, that's what the conversation became. No, at that point, they're just building a case. They already don't like the game for one reason. And so they just build their own case. They're like, okay, what other reasons are there to not like this game? You want to know what really killed Battlefield 2042? That it wasn't a Battlefield game. What killed it is that they had this fucking Rainbow Six style operator system. And like that is not what people who play Battlefield want. But they tried to turn Battlefield into, this thing is popular now. Let's do this thing. That's ultimately what killed it. Yeah, and the bugs. Yeah, the bugs too. Concord's Steam launch numbers are astonishingly low for a blockbuster competitive game. It's not. Look, you saw was a Paul Tassi, I think. Like, so there must be some mistake. I don't understand why the game is selling so poorly. Meanwhile, literally everybody else that's watching this is like, we could have told you this was going to happen. You're the only one who didn't see this happen. You're the only one who was surprised by this. But the piranha-like gnashing of social media that hasn't delivered any real insights to why it's fared so poorly. If you actually bothered to listen, maybe you would have found that insight. Some monarchs have said with conviction that Concord's $40 price tag was obviously one of the problems. It was one of the problems. Forgetting that Helldivers 2, the biggest breakout game of the year and a game also published by Sony, is $40. I'm not even going to say anything to counter that because they kind of sort of almost get there in the next line. In a saturated market where 39 games release on Steam each day on average, I'm not convinced that was the problem. Concord couldn't even get a large audience to give it a shot during its free beta. Okay, so let's go back to your $40 thing. So Helldivers 2 was $40. Okay, what's Helldivers 2's direct competition? Earth Defense Force, which you also have to purchase up front. All right. Deep Rock Galactic. Oh, it's another game you have to purchase up front. You guys seeing a pattern here? Okay, now what about Concord? What's Concord's main competition? Overwatch? Oh, Overwatch is free to play. Valorant? Oh, Valorant's free to play too. Apex Legends? Oh, Apex Legends is also free. Wow, you guys seeing a pattern here? It looks like game journalists can't do pattern recognition. And right there at the end, Concord couldn't even get a large audience to give it a shot during its free beta. Are you implying that presentation is important? If the game was a masterpiece, but no one tried it because it looks like shit, I'm sure that enough of the few people who did try it would be trying to force everyone else to play it. Like, that's how Deep Rock Galactic has been growing, actually. Because like I've yet to meet a person who played it that doesn't like it. Everyone who plays that game starts spreading the gospel of rock and stone. So despite the fact that the game doesn't look the best, I actually kind of like its style, but a lot of people in current year don't. Once like 100 people are saying how awesome the game is, they eventually give it a shot, and then now you got 101 people saying how awesome the game is. Concord looks so bad, no one was even willing to give it a try. And the fact that there was no word of mouth about how good the game actually is shows it's not good. Anyway, I'm not wasting any more time on this idiot here. Let's move on. I don't have the one true answer, but my take now is that Concord isn't selling a fantasy or narrative that's getting FPS players excited to play it in the first place before they've even decided whether they like its guns, characters, and modes. The one reason I can imagine it's struggling in that respect is that it doesn't have an easily disseminated identity rooted in a competitive shooter pedigree, and it's as its competitors do. Valorant is Counter-Strike. It's easy to tell your Discord friend it's CSGO by the League of Legends studio. Apex Legends comes from Infinity Ward lineage. Deadlock is Dota plus TF2. Concord comes from ex-Bungie devs. I don't really get the impression Destiny 2 fans perceive it as an offering with any sort of spiritual connection to their beloved space fashion game, of which the PvP Crucible is a small part. So, literally admitting that this game was made for nobody. Yes, that this is unironically true. Concord failed because it was a game that was made for nobody. And guess who bought it? Its intended audience. Nobody. Dramatic post-launch turnarounds do happen, not for a live service that failed so bad. Like all the other turnarounds, like No Man's Sky, they had a massive amount of players, even when it was quote-unquote bad. Same with Cyberpunk 2077. This game doesn't even have enough players to maintain more than 4 concurrent matches going on at a time. No, it's already dead. And maybe updates in a sale can get Concord some momentum. The only thing that could get the game some momentum is going free to play, and that momentum is going to disappear really quick. I doubt that they would even get as much as they did during the beta. Or maybe there just wasn't enough oxygen available to a game with Concord's particular characteristics in late August current year, a period that's included one of the fastest selling games ever on Steam. Didn't mention it by name, of course, because they still want to shit on Wukong. A World of Warcraft expansion. I didn't even know World of Warcraft was having a new expansion. I'm surprised it's still alive, really. Great new games like Tactical Breach Wizards and now Valve's own hero-based MOBA shooter hybrid. DICE went on a years-long Battlefield 2042 overall campaign after its rough launch. It's possible Firewalk will stick with it. Oh, the best outcome for Concord would be if Sony was stuck in an 8-year deal to keep the game running, and it's going to be a money-sinking albatross around their neck for another decade. Yeah, that would be the best outcome. They're still not going to learn their lesson, though. Either way, the reflex to cheer for Concord's failure as if it's deserved only produces resentment and misunderstandings, creates an environment where everything is deemed obvious and real aimlessness is drowned out in favor of shareable quips, surefire surface-level observations, and hyperbole. These are not the ugliest character designs you've ever seen. Get a grip. No, I think they are. These are the ugliest character designs in any game. Not counting games where a character is made ugly on purpose as part of the story. Yeah, these characters, like all of Concord, just looks bad. Like nothing there makes anyone want to play it. You can understand why this is a more comfortable rhetorical lane than reckoning with the more complex reality of a volatile game landscape where quality is not the sole predictor of success, where multi-billion-dollar institutions like Sony often struggle to be heard, where it's difficult to make predictions, and where it often feels like years of work can be swept away by small miscalculations and rapid changes in taste. I'm going to tell you this right now. At least when it comes to aesthetics, there has not been a rapid change in taste for as long as I've been alive. We want the same stuff. You just refuse to give it to us because you're trying to push your ideology. And that right there, that's why we're dancing on the graves of these games. Because they spit in our face. They actively refuse to give us what they know we want. They force, they try to force on us what they think we should have. And then when all of us reject them and they fail, yeah, there's going to be a lot of dancing on that grave. Yes, this is a deserved failure. You could tell from the character designs in this game, they went out of their way to tell us that this isn't for us. And now it's somehow our fault for when they fail because we're not buying it. All right, sure.